Hello. So if you watched last week, you'll know that we weren't planning on having a discussion this week because we were going to be celebrating Eid at a picnic, but we weren't able to have the picnic, or I should say that the person who's organizing the picnic is here. And it got delayed. So we decided, hey, an extra opportunity to have a discussion. It's going to be short, hopefully around like 15 minutes or so. We thought we'd just kind of extend on last week's topic and just talk about like some of the people that we like reading or listening to just to learn Islam from, like what are the sources of authority. I should probably come up with a general introduction so it's consistent every time. But hi, welcome to Mosque of Renewal. We are at Plymouth Congregational Church every Saturday. It's now going to be 6 to 8. Um, Find us on Facebook, and I guess that's pretty much it. My name
Don't
is
forget to like, comment, favorite, and subscribe.
Yeah,
Smash that like button.
because we did actually end up putting this on YouTube. So I guess we have all of those options that YouTube offers.
Get a thumbs up in the description.
Yeah, and make sure you put what is it? You like click the bell so you'll get our notifications. All those things. Um, we'll become a real YouTube channel
Yay!
one day.
Someday, maybe.
So my name is Gabriel Campbell. I use he/him pronouns. Here you go.
I am Nikki Holtman. I use she, her pronouns.
And we have one person off camera who you'll be hearing.
Hassanah, I was on last week. You probably saw me. I use she, her. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, what are some people that we like reading, books that we've like read that have influenced us, or things that we're reading now? I default to reading, but also other forms of media.
Right now, I'm actually reading this really awesome book called Living Out Loud, Voices of Gay and Transgender Muslims. And it centers on, I can't remember what the guy's name is who wrote it. He also wrote homosexuality in Islam.
I've met him.
Scott Kugler,
yeah,
Rock or something.
I was like, there's an Arabic name in the middle there. So
yeah. And it's actually really interesting. And because Living Out Loud, he goes through and he's interviewing all of these queer and trans Muslims and how they, for lack of a better word, justify their sexuality or gender identity within what is commonly thought of the traditional Islamic rules and guidelines, and how they're fighting the stereotypes and the work that they're doing. And it's really, really, really interesting. And I'm learning a lot about what the queer and trans Muslim experience is outside of the United States.
Yeah. I am going to grab my phone so I can say this name properly. I'm reading a book right now called Reasoning with God, and it's about reclaiming Sharia from Puritan interpretations of it. And I found it through a podcast that I like listening to called Seeking Beauty, I believe. And all of it is connected to a specific scholar/jurist whose name is Khalid Abu El Fadl. And he's a law professor out in California. He's also what is called a classically trained jurist. But what's interesting is that he then has to explain what what classical training for jurists actually looks like. I've learned a lot just from like reading about his experience. And yeah, he's in like this, like it's basically reading him is the same way I feel like some of the first times I read Supreme Court opinions, like really good, well thought out ones, because it's just kind of what like clicks with me really well. This idea of like using reason and knowledge and compassion to try to understand what is like good and beautiful and ethical and moral in the world. And so also the same kind of feeling I had when I read Martin Luther King Jr.'s biography, as autobiography as put together by like just putting together all of his papers. So yeah, so it's just like really like it's interesting because I feel like I'm not necessarily learning new moral opinions. Like it's not like I didn't believe some of these things before, but it's helpful to see someone who is so learned, I guess, articulating them, just having like someone else also being articulating these viewpoints, and then doing so from within an Islamic framework is really beneficial. I will say though that like he's very critical in like a good way. Like he's very like he deconstructs Puritanism very well and kind of historically where it came from and like the influence that it has. But in reading him, it's like I'm just like, oh my, oh man, like Puritanism has taken over everything. Like I started to have this vision of that, like there are places where Islam is as bad as you would see in The Handmaid's Tale, which may be true, and I'm just insulated from it living here in the United States. I don't know, but it's kind of it's almost scary stuff. Like I have to like be like, oh, is this real? Do people actually believe these things? And yeah, people do places. But yeah, so he has a podcast and there's a book I'm reading right now. And then I also like this person who he has YouTube videos. I think he's actually out in Eden Prairie. Like he's not very far away, but just far enough away that I can't like regularly go to his stuff. Um, but I do like watching his like hookbuzz online. And his name is maybe somewhere in here. I think it's like Jamal. I don't know. You know what? But because I'm on YouTube, because this will be on YouTube, I can put links to his channel in the description later. I'll put links to all of these things. Yeah, we'll put links to all of these sources
In the doobly doo?
in the doobly doo. Okay, so what do you think?
Oh, um, as far as like sources now, like because I don't see myself like super practicing, I'm not really concerned with like contemporary like information. So like most of what I get is honestly from like discussion groups and then like what I see from posts, what I see other people like sort of arguing, hashing out. I guess when I look at like the formative knowledge that I had like years ago, like that was mostly from like carrying around with Burlesque the Traveler around and like reading that like front to back. But like I don't even know that I would necessarily read that like or like advise people to read that because there's some super problematic stuff in that. Otherwise, Al Maqasid by Imam Nawawi was really important to me. The the book Fazail-i Amal that Jamatul Tabligh puts out, like that was really important to me, as well as the sequel Fazail Sadaqat, because it's got all these like stories of like the stuff that Sahaba used to do and like basically their lives. Like it's really important to me. Um, Sufi Sage of Arabia was really important to me at one point. It's about this guy's life who like lived in like Yemen in the 1800s, and like he was a really prominent jurist, and like there were some books by Hisham Kabani I like Angels Unveiled, that discuss the Islamic concept of angels. Otherwise, just like I don't know. One book I wouldn't recommend, but was really important to me early on, or one set of books really. There's this Turkish group called Hakikat Kitabi or something like that, like Hizmet Books. And like they like if you email them, they will send you this like free 18 set volume. It's the worst translated like garbage like that you'll ever read because like it goes off on these like random tangents about like super like neo Ottoman like Turkish nationalism, like very they I'll just say they love their Sunniism, but like wow, like and it's all really poorly translated, like but that was definitely amusing and sort of because it was free, I took it, right? I'm like, I'll take your free books, like and it's this 18 volume set, it's ridiculous, but like what is this like really old discredited like conspiracy theory about the British like influencing Middle Eastern politics? Oh my God. Anyway, that but yeah, that set was influential, but I can't recommend it because it's all garbage. But I don't know. So like most of what I get now is just like listening to other people and like trying to like watch videos and like see the discussions going on around me with other creamers on Facebook.
I forgot to say another one that was definitely influential to me and who I really love reading is Reza Aslan.
Mm.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it's No God But God, right? That's
Yeah.
No God But God. I also read Sell It, which was his exploration into the historical figure of Jesus of Nazareth, and that was really cool. I haven't read some of his other books, but I just really also enjoy the way that he writes. And
Yeah.
I love the interview he did on CNN where like
yeah.
I also really, really like the Tariq Ramadan book, Western Muslims, or the one that he wrote about Muslims in the West.
Mm.
It was really, really, really interesting and really well written on how we're adapting to like secular society or not adapting, or, you know, like mixing the two together. And it was really cool. Also, because I work for a trans health organization that also does like queer stuff, uh, Sexual Ethics in Islam by Keisha Ali.
Ooh, I've never heard of it, but it sounds
I'll
interesting.
read
I
it.
would like
I'll
to
read
read
It's
it.
like super fast. Once I get it back from Jordan, I'll give it to you.
Nice.
Can I be like third on the list?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would read
I'm
that.
building quite the gender politics and sexuality politics in Islam library collection for my other organization. And
Mhm.
Okay, I'm forgetting what it is now. I'm gonna have to like look it up. I remember I once read a book that was just talking about like that traced the history of the hijab, and it was really interesting. It was written by this woman, and I did a paper on it, and I now do not remember. If I can find it, it will also be included. All of these things will hopefully be included in the description, the doobly doo. But yeah, like I definitely like reading things that like go in on specific topics, like maybe like sexual ethics, or in this case, it was just the history of the hijab and like the proof for it or not, and just like how and
Yeah.
why it has become such a wide practice. To the point that I don't know about anyone else, but I definitely met people who think that it's like something that has always existed and that it's like mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, which to me it seems like a crazy mindset, but it's like a lot of people believe that.
I mean, it's obligatory, but also like if you're going to wear the hijab, you have to be spiritually in a place where you're doing it to honor God. You're not doing it because someone's telling you you have to. Like I wear hijab to feel connected and close to God. I'm not doing it to hide my hair. Obviously, before we started the video, like my hair was down and out. Like I have no qualms showing it. For me, it's just something that helps me remember God and remember my faith and helps me stay more spiritually grounded. Once I was a pretty heavy social drinker, and then once I started covering my hair, like that pretty much stopped. So like it helps me remember what I've committed my life to, and that's for me makes it obligatory. It's like a constant reminder of God and of my faith, and helps me feel spiritually connected.
I think there's clearly an entire discussion in here that we should come back to in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So this was.
Were you doing a hijab video?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can do tutorials.
So we promised a very short discussion.
Yeah.
I think unless we have other sources we really want to add to it, I think we can like just do a plug for the next couple of weeks. Did you want to add something before we wrap up?
What do y'all think about like books that are not necessarily about like Islam or relating to Islam, but are really important to like how you like conceptualize and perceive the world?
Well, I mean, I read a lot of mystery and science fiction novels and fantasy, so like, I mean, fairies and like orcs are not.
I mean, I read a lot
Real.
in general, like things not necessarily religiously oriented, but obviously in the way that they influence my understanding of history and my understanding of our society, then that influences how I practice, because I think context is incredibly important to how you understand and implement religion and figure out what's good. So yeah, I'm all for personally, as personal like preference, I'm all for learning more about the world. I feel like I always want to know more about the world and about how were functioning in order to make those determinations better. I studied philosophy. I studied philosophy in undergrad, and one of the things I disliked about it is that it seemed so abstract and divorced from the world. And I really wanted to like feel like a system of morality and ethics was like embedded in actual problems. So
That's interesting. I guess one idea that might be useful to expand on is like outside of Islamic texts, what are the religious texts outside of our faith that you would find most interest you spiritually?
well, I actually try to read as much scripture as possible. So, like, I've read the entire Bhagavad Gita.
Mhm.
I was going to like a Bhagavad Gita study class at one point. I read it actually at the same time I was reading the Quran, like all the way through the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I've read all of the New Testament. I've read like half of the Old Testament. I got caught in Kings because it was just like a chronicle of like Judea and Israel doing things they shouldn't, and it was repetitive and I got bored. I'm sorry, but
Yeah. I think we all get bored in Kings. I'm not gonna lie. I've always just kind of skipped that book when I've read the Bible.
Maybe I should do that. What I'm doing now, piece by piece, is I'm reading the books separately. So I'm reading Psalms now, and I'm planning on reading Proverbs next. I also recently read like a book that was talking about like rediscovering the heart of Christianity. So it's not just like scriptures, but also just like I like seeing people doing good work in. Well, I like seeing people doing good work in their religions. I read a lot about like Thich Nhat Hanh's work, and yeah, I was recently reading his book on kind of like the principles of Buddhism.
Interesting.
So yeah, just trying to understand people of goodwill and how they express that through their religious traditions in general, as well as like learning about Islam specifically.
I guess for me, like when it comes to the Bible, like the one book that really like sort of speaks out to me that I can go back to any day is Ecclesiastes, because it's sort of God like saying to me like I get it, like I've put you in a meaningless world, like, and I understand it. There's a certain empathy I get from that book of like seeing like so much meaninglessness and like suffering in the world and just being like and I'm like feeling like a sort of compassion from the creator about like being sort of thrust into that like world and like that scenario. Um, but aside from the Bible, like I guess like reading the I Ching and like the Tao Te Ching were both really important to me. Some books on Zen were important to me. Watching videos on like that some like Theravadins have made on like what the difference between Theravada and Mahayana is like really helped me understand like Buddhism, because whenever I look at two things that are really closely related and they note the differences between them, it helps me understand them like in general, because like minute differences help me like understand those sort of details. And that was really interesting to me. Other one is like I don't know, so that would be my sort of like things that I would say like I incorporate into my spirituality. They're not necessarily Islamic, but I still like take away important things from.
Well, I'm going to use that as a transition to talk about the next couple of weeks, next 2 weeks. The discussion is going to be first, why do we believe in God, if we believe in God, and why do we believe that Muhammad is a messenger of God? Basically, just talking about the Shahada and why we feel we can or cannot say it, or different, like maybe it seems obvious, like, oh, you're Muslim, so you must believe in the Shahada, but I will definitely want to open it up to like discussion, like, how did you come to believe in the Shahada if you do, and how do you feel about it now? What does it mean to you? Or I should say there's two Shahadas, right? Because there's two of them in there. And then after that, talking about how Islam relates to other religions. So it kind of syncs with what we've just been talking about. Do we draw from other religious traditions? If so, what? How do we view these other traditions in relationship to our own? So that'll be the next 2 weeks. Anyone out there who is watching and is interested in those discussions, definitely please stop by. Please come join the discussion.
What's the address?
It will be at Plymouth Congregational Church. It's on the corner of Franklin and Nicollet in Minneapolis, and it's going to be from 6 to 8. So I hope to see you there. We all hope to see you there. And thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry this was like a short discussion, but hopefully it was
thank you.
useful. All right. See you all next week.
Yeah, smash the like button.